Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Wilson here with my good friend Adrian, right? And this is The Supernatural and Beyond. This is our not but this is another episode in our Down the Rabbit Hole series. Yep. And what we're doing is we're taking a look at kind of some current events. The purpose of The Supernatural and Beyond is to connect the dots between the natural,
yes,
the supernatural, and, of course, beyond.
Beyond.
So, Adrian, we were talking just before we got started that you had done some research and found some very interesting information. So why don't you share that with our friends?
Okay, it'd be an honor. Okay, so we're talking about the New World Order, the rabbit hole of the New World Order in the end times. And what's interesting is, over the last couple years or so, maybe decade or more, it's like, how do these corrupt leaders around the world, how do they get in power?
Yeah.
How do they stay in power?
Yeah.
Because you look at other countries like Venezuela, perfect example. 20 years ago, economically, where was Venezuela at?
Sound as a rock.
They were coming up. They were the biggest, baddest country in Central America. They were selling oil. They were doing good economically and all this. And then the people fall to socialism. The nation falls to socialism. And they still had elections and stuff, right? But how did these people stay in power? And I'm not just talking about Venezuela or Central South America, but I mean, we jump over the pond and we go look at Europe, right? You have some leaders in Europe.
Yeah.
You got monarchies, oligarchies, you got different forms of government. Most governments, though, worldwide, election governments, right?
For the
Even
most
Russia,
part, yeah.
election. China used to be election. How do these people get in power? And then these corrupt people that are in power, if you look at them, they get along well with other corrupt people that are in power. They're kind of in cahoots. And then I'm not going to name any names specifically, but you look at them and they end up on somebody's flight log and have connections to this pedophile somewhere in the Caribbean islands. And it becomes like one huge mess. Like, how are these people connected to this guy on this island where they're doing this satanic pedophile ring, total blood sacrifice, sick stuff, right?
Sick.
So these world leaders, how do they get elected? And then you have these people trying to overthrow them in different countries, right? There's this protest in this country, that protest in that country. And we're talking about many different countries around the world. Well, we look at the elections, and there's been recent developments that's happened worldwide, globally, and we find out about a certain election system that's been using technology. And, like in the beginning, as we like to say, God told Adam and Eve, take dominion over the world. And it seems like somebody corrupt, like the fallen Luciferians, the fallen demons, have corrupted the election system, and they've taken control and they manipulate it. And these people are buying their votes. So they're using this voting system, and they want to stay in power. They buy the votes. They stay in power. Many believe that's how Hugo Chavez stayed in power and just completely destroyed that nation. And so we look at systems like that, and it makes me wonder and put the pieces of the puzzle together, the way that these people, these corrupt individuals, have been able to rule and reign over their country against the will of their people is they take power or they take dominion over the voting system, and they buy those votes.
That's a very interesting prospect that different countries, different leaders are all put together to form a plan to change the world.
Right.
Because there's, if
and not for good.
Not for good. No,
they're not changing it for good.
No, they're changing it for their own benefit. It's once again, it's interesting how these people are able to associate with one another. There's been a study I just heard recently on the radio of how every president in the United States is related. I mean, blood relationship.
Mm.
And
I've briefly heard a theory on that. That's a rabbit hole for another rabbit
that's
hole.
another rabbit hole for another rabbit hole. And so how is it possible that one bloodline can have all of these different offsprings?
Mm-hmm.
You can't be in politics unless you're part of the bloodline club.
I heard skull and bones before too, like, part of the bloodline club. But yeah, exactly what you're saying. And what's funny is, if we're talking about this too between segments, if you're not part of that bloodline club, they come after you. Like, there's been presidents that weren't part of that bloodline club, and somebody took a shot at them. They've gone against the grain,
Mhm.
and they were assassinated, or there's been an attempt assassination on their life.
Yeah,
Ronald Reagan comes to mind,
it comes to mind.
right? They took a shot at him. He wasn't part of the cabal, the blood cabal. They took a shot at Kennedy. They assassinated Kennedy. That was a clear-cut assassination.
Clear cut.
And he was going against the globalist and the New World Order type stuff.
Yeah, there's so many theories, and again, well, we're in the rabbit hole. I'd like to just throw out. I've always found it interesting, and I just saw another little documentary on 9/11.
Yeah.
When the jets crashed into the buildings,
Yeah.
and how they were saying that based on the story, the official storyline, it's amazing how the buildings fell. They didn't fall because of structural
Damage.
It fell for another reason.
Right.
And we can speculate, and there's been ideas of, particle beam weaponry. There's been charger sets, or it would cascade charges and so forth and so on. Me, myself, for an operation that large, it couldn't be planned by just, a bunch of guys with box cutters. That's
a lot of pieces got to fall into play.
Yeah, a lot of things got to come into play, So, and this has been gone over again and again and again. I don't want to rehash old things. However, we are starting to connect the dots, and we're starting to see that the Luciferian plan is being implemented, like they call it the plandemic.
The plandemic.
And there are other things that are going on. Once again, one of my favorite TV shows or series, I was discussing this with our engineer and camera operator about Game of Thrones.
Mm-hmm.
And Game of Thrones is one of those shows that let you see everybody's vying for the Iron Throne. For those familiar with the series, those that are not, stream it. It's great. 8 seasons. They were all vying for control of the 7 kingdoms through the Iron Throne.
Uh-huh.
However, each major family had their own plots, subplots, and counterplots. So there were a lot of things going on. And if you didn't follow the series,
You were lost.
you're pretty much lost. Even the series came from the books, and the books had far more intricate detail. So if the Luciferians, and I believe that they could control the world, they would.
Yeah.
But because of the creator of heaven and earth, he's throwing monkey wrenches in everything that he does.
Yeah, if they could take power and over the world, they would. And this end time New World Order rabbit hole that we're in, the good news is that we look look back at the prophecy from Daniel, one of my favorite prophets in the Bible or the biblical text. He talks about seeing the New World Order as a statue. So he saw one empire, the head. He saw another empire, the chest.
Mm-hmm.
He saw another empire, the waist, and then another empire, the legs. But then at the end of that, he saw the feet at the bottom. And the feet at the bottom, 10 toes, right? 10 different empires, part of this global network, right?
Right.
And it was made of clay and steel and clay and iron. Yeah, correct. Clay and iron. And so there were weak parts of the kingdom and there were strong parts of the kingdom, meaning these Luciferians and these demons that are trying to take over, the satanic pedophile ring Luciferian people that want to take over, they can't do it because there's going to be parts of the world that fight back, parts of the world that resist, parts of the world that don't play their little games. And the one thing that we need to look at is we're looking at how these corrupt people stay in power and how they're used like a corrupted system, a corrupted voting system to buy the votes to stay in power. And then these people, these leaders, what do? They appoint representatives from their nation to go into the UN. Mm-hmm. And the UN, I believe, to tie this all up, is that global one world government is the UN. So just want to lay that rabbit hole out there and remind our viewers to be sure to like, comment down below, and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.